All right, let's get right into it. Today, we are digging into a really profound idea, an ancient Gaelic concept that's been sort of reimagined for our world today. It's called Cosmunity. And really, it's a challenge, right? It challenges us to remember a totally different way of being connected to everything. So, here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll break down what cosmunity even is. Then, we're going to trace it back to its roots in the ancient Brehon way. From there, we'll get into this worldview of deep, deep relations and the incredible power of the spoken word. And we'll wrap up by looking at why peace isn't just a state of being, but something that needs active practice, what our source calls, and I love this, choreography. You know, the whole idea we're exploring today really boils down to this one big question. Can we live in a way that isn't just about money or strict laws or, speech that's become cheap and meaningless? That's the challenge, right? That's the core question Cosmunity asks us to wrestle with. Okay, so let's get to the heart of it. What is Cosmunity? It might be a new word to you, but it actually points to a really, really old way of seeing the world. So if you break it down, Cosmunity is pretty straightforward, right? It's a mashup of cosmic and unity. But the key thing here is that it's not about inventing something from scratch. It's about remembering. Remembering this ancient Gaelic way of living where your real wealth, your real meaning, came from the connection to the land, to your work, to your language, and of course, to each other. And this quote, wow, it just nails it. Wealth is not piles of dead things. Think about that. It's saying that true wealth isn't about hoarding stuff. It's about living bonds well kept. It's about how we tend to our relationships. I mean, that's a complete 180 from how we're often taught to think, isn't it? So to really get a handle on cosmunity, we've got to go back to its source. We're talking about the Brahon way of ancient Ireland. And look, it's so easy to just think of this as a bunch of old laws, but it's so much deeper than that. It's really a whole philosophy built on compassion and memory. Yeah, the Brahon way isn't described as some rigid legal code. The phrase used is weathered mercy. Just let that sink in for a second. Weathered mercy. It's this idea of compassion that's been through it all, that's been tested by life. It's a system based on wisdom and actual relationships, not just cold, abstract rules on a page. And you can see the contrast so starkly here. On the one hand, you've got the Brehon weaving. It's this living, breathing fabric made up of kin, witnesses, promises, even song and satire, and the land itself. It's all woven together. And then look at what came later. A world of iron swords, armies, and these cold, abstract paper contracts. It's a totally different reality. Okay, so this brings us to a really core principle of cosmunity, and it's this. Absolutely nothing stands alone. Everything, and I mean everything, is connected. I mean, just look at how they talk about water. It's not just H2O, right? It's not some resource to be managed or exploited. It's a living presence. They call water she. It's seen as this powerful force that literally turns the land into our food, into bread. It's a worldview that sees life and spirit in absolutely everything. So, to make this a little less abstract, just think about a loaf of bread. To us, it's just bread. But in this way of seeing things, it's so much more. That loaf contains the field it grew in, the rain, the worker, the person who kept the seeds safe, the miller, the baker. It even contains the hunger it's about to satisfy and the blessing that comes with it. It's like a whole universe of relationships baked into one single thing. And this is really the key takeaway here. Neighborhood isn't just about the people living next door with fences between your houses. It expands way beyond that. It's about how we live among the trees and the rivers and the animals that are all part of our world. Those relationships are just as vital as our relationships with other people. Okay, let's talk about another massive piece of this puzzle, the power of the word. Because in this worldview, in Cosmunity, words are not cheap. They're not just sounds we make. They are powerful forces that actually have real-world weight. They literally build and bind your world together. There's this amazing Gaelic concept for this called log maneirc, and it literally translates to the honor price or the price of a person's face. The idea is that your reputation, your public face, had a real tangible value. So if you dishonored someone with your words, you weren't just hurting them, you were literally wounding the entire community. So because of this, a word spoken in front of witnesses, that wasn't just talk. It became sacred. It transformed from just a performance into something with real-world consequences. It was a binding contract.
Your word wasn't like your bond. It was your bond, period. Okay, so the obvious question is, what happens when someone breaks that bond? What if they refuse to make things right? Well, the Brehon Way had a process for that, too. It's called Athgabal. And it's really important to understand this was not just random theft or punishment. It was a formal, lawful, highly structured process of taking something from the person who did the harm.
And this is absolutely the most crucial part to get. This wasn't about vengeance. It wasn't an act of rage. It was a form, a kind of choreography, designed for one purpose: to retrieve the honor that was lost and bring the community back into balance. It was justice as a restoration, not just as punishment. Big difference. So all of this web of relationships, the power of words, the methods for restoring balance, it all leads us to our final point. Peace isn't something that just happens. It's not a passive state. It's an active, ongoing practice. It needs, well, it needs choreography.
And I just love this metaphor here. Growing a Cosmunity isn't like an industrial revolution, all fast and mechanical. No way. It's more like tending an orchard. It's slow. It's intentional. You have to be patient. Let the roots grow deep. But if you do it right, eventually, it will be full of life.
And this right here, this is the choreography of peace. These are the sacred ways we have to remember. It's remembering that water requires a covenant from us, that food requires blessing, that land needs to be shared in proportion, that leadership or sovereignty requires being a good host, that our speech needs discipline, injury needs a real remedy, and our very sense of belonging, it requires witnesses. It requires each other.
So at the end of the day, the wisdom here is pretty profound, isn't it? The strongest community, or tooth as they called it, it's not the one with the biggest walls. It's the one where care is treated as a sacred practice. It all comes back to tending those living bonds we started with. And so that leaves us with this final thought to chew on. These old ways whisper that a strong community isn't built on walls, but on sacred ways of care. So the question for all of us is, in our modern world, what ways of care have we maybe forgotten? And more importantly, what ways can we start to remember right here, right now?